are pleased today to have true experts with us to talk about AI and cybersecurity. To my immediate right is Kris Lovejoy. Kris is an internationally recognized leader in the field of cybersecurity and privacy. She is Kyndryl's global practice leader for security and resilience. Prior to joining Kyndryl, Kris was Ernst & Young's global consulting cybersecurity leader. She was also the founder and CEO of Blue Vector, Inc., an AI-powered sense and respond platform acquired by Comcast in 2019. Kris has a number of US and EU patents in the areas around risk management. And to her right is Kamal Ahluwalia. He's the president of Ikigai. He is a serial entrepreneur and technology executive who has successfully scaled and sold multiple companies, including Selectica, Aptus, and Model N. He was also previously the president of Eightfold.ai, where he helped create a platform for reskilling and upskilling the global workforce. He is also the co-author of 2 books, and you can hear Kamal, if you would like to learn a little bit more about his journey and Eightfold's journey on the podcast, AI and the Future of Work. So, welcome. So the title of this panel is Digital Horizons, Cultivating Partnerships for Strategic and Emerging Technology. And I want to focus first on the word partnerships. How, Kris, do you define partnerships in the context of your work? Is that a partnership between and among governments, between industry and governments? How does academia fit into that?
Yeah, that's a great question. In the world of cybersecurity, there is no competition. And I've spent a lot of my career as a chief security officer. I was a chief security officer for IBM for many years. And you would think that when it comes to this particular area, that you would conserve data, information. However, what you find is that you're stronger together. And so I don't, when I think about partnership, everyone is a candidate for partnership, within my particular world, whether it be another software hardware vendor, be a government agency, it may be a close competitor. All of us have an opportunity to learn from one another.
Kamal, what about you?
So I think last few years, the focus has been around AI. Fuel for that is clearly data and compute. India has a lot of it, and US has a lot of the technology. So I think partnership here and now needs to be on what the joint opportunity looks like and how the 2 parties can actually collaborate. And of course, the businesses will benefit from that. But the data and the compute part need to come together. So if we keep segregating that, this thing gets slowed down.
Great, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later. So, Kris, I understand you and DNSA Newberger participated in the US-India cyber dialogue earlier this year. Can you share your observations within the context of how relationships or affairs have evolved since then, since that dialogue?
Yeah, and I've been doing work with and in India for probably about 25 years, and I think that the relationship has grown tremendously over the years and in a very significant way. And we spend a lot of time talking about the relationship between the 2 parties within the context of technology specifically, and drilling down into emerging technologies like AI. When I reflect on that conversation, a lot of what we were talking about is a bit of a dichotomy that exists today between the US and India on the subject of privacy, and this goes hand in hand to the subject of AI. One of the things that I talk a lot about is this, over the years, we've seen this rise in nationalism, and that nationalism has manifested itself in a form of techno-nationalism. That techno-nationalism has led to many nation states introducing data privacy, digital sovereignty rules that force data and technology to be resident within a particular country. And what we have to understand is when you create silos of data and technology, it creates complexity. And so we spent a lot of time talking about the unintended consequences of digital sovereignty, data localization, privacy laws, that while we might have good intentions with working one another, these kinds of siloed sort of approaches may cause frictions and unintended consequences long term.
And Kamal, that's something that you and I were talking about a few minutes ago in terms of how nations are actually hurting certain emerging economies because they are siloing the data. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So in my previous company, Eightfold, we were being used in over 150 countries. And 5 years ago, 4 years ago, all large global companies would say, how would you operate in Russia and how would you operate in China? And initially I would dodge it, but then I realized that they were not close to getting there. So it's okay, whenever you're ready, let us know and we'll just need a lead time of 1 to 2 years. Issue with both those countries and with an AI solution is everything needs to be hosted there. Everything goes into those countries, nothing comes out. Now, as it turns out, 2 years ago, everybody stopped talking about Russia, same thing with China. So, but the whole thing is, the problem never got solved. Solution never got there. And those are the things that we need to rethink that, and what she's referring to, this data sovereignty is not helpful. You're just slowing things down. And what we were discussing, right, 40% of all global data, I think it's about, what, 60 zettabytes is sitting in Western Digital's devices.
That's
Imagine
correct.
if that was easily accessible with the right guardrails. I mean, there's a treasure trove there to learn.
Right. So Kamal, you, in our prep call, you emphasized that you really wanted to talk about the benefits of AI instead of the fears that I think a lot of people have about it, particularly with ChatGPT and all of the publicity around that. So can you talk to us a little bit about distill down some of the benefits that you think AI offers?
Absolutely. So humanity is not going to end with ChatGPT. So don't worry, it's fine. Now, thing that we are seeing with AI is a massive opportunity, and there are a couple of things that we were discussing. Number one is the opportunity for more participation across the board, not just the upper echelon, because what we see is the wealth has been concentrated. There's been a lot of wealth creation in each of the last technology jumps, but it is largely concentrated and mostly in the hands of men. And I think especially in India, which has the largest, youngest workforce, I think over 200 million between 15 and 25, if we are able to equip them to thrive and ride the AI wave, you solve two problems. One is the participation, because that's part of the economic spread in India, that you have more people part of the economy. And the second part is US companies need the workforce that is not, actually, we don't have enough people who have the same skills. The second part is, if I give you a simple measure, we simply don't have enough women in the leadership roles and actually driving that. So one way to measure our progress with the AI wave is that in 5 years, how many women billionaires are there, whether here or in India, because of the AI thing. The other piece around the regulation is, regulation will never catch up with the pace at which creativity is moving in AI. Yes, we need the responsible AI and ethical AI, but new business models, new ways to actually make money will emerge. And I think if we can train all the people on how to stop being afraid of AI, how to leverage AI, I think we will see a much more diverse workforce going forward. This will generate a lot of wealth. I would rather have it distributed a lot more than what we've done in the past.
And Kris, you've spoken a lot about the importance of building our base of female executives, particularly in the upper management. A lot of companies do a decent job in trying to bring in women, but then there's an attrition that occurs, and so companies do struggle with retention. So what are some of the benefits that you've seen in having a more diverse workforce with women, particularly in those upper levels in your space?
Well, for me, it's a numbers issue. I mean, in the cybersecurity field, we talk about the skills deficit. We've got 3.5 million open jobs. Women represent 50% of the US, of the world's population. It's a numbers game. If only 10% of the population is women, you need to bring more women in. As far as that mid-career drop-off, it is a big issue for us. What we see is that women constitute about 36% of the hiring pool within the technology sphere. By the time you get to kind of that mid-career first management decision, you get down to about 5%. And so what you see is this just gigantic dip where women are less likely to take these management positions. I believe it's because there are, in many cases, a preconceived bias that women can't both have children or a family as well and take an executive position. So this is something that I'm focusing on quite a bit. Now, what I see is when you do include, and it's not just women, but you include lots of different ethnicities and people with different value sets, you're going to get a different outcome when it comes to creative decision making. And so, for lots of different reasons, it's important to ensure that you have the right representation at the upper layers to bring the teams underneath into a place where they can begin to sort of extend and expand themselves.
Yeah, it's interesting. So at Western Digital, we did a survey to figure out what percentage of our workforce was participating in our invention process. And what we found is that our numbers were not reflective of the percentage of women who were female inventors was not reflective of the percentage of the workforce. That's not uncommon. We actually were about the same as the rest of the tech industry. And by having a deliberate program to focus on increasing the numbers of women as inventors, we actually increased to about 28%, which is more than double of what we started with. And so I do think that as companies think about these issues, being deliberate is very important as part of that.
And being open. Don't be defensive. Yes. Nobody is great in that diversity column, but the more we share on what did we do to become more diverse, that'll get the thing around. I've actually, last 5 years, started to count every meeting I'm in, I count the number of women in the meeting. Like, this is a good panel. USIBC board could use more women. This group, I've been coming for a few years. This audience could be more diverse. Because if you take each of these little steps, you will become more diverse.
Yeah, just wanted to add one thing, and this is something Kyndryl is sponsoring with the Indian government that I think is an amazing program. Right now what we're doing is we've got a program called the Cyber Rakshak program. And India has done an extraordinary job over the past couple of years of creating more economic inclusivity for those who are at the sort of the lower end of the economic spectrum by creating digital banking services. Now, one of the problems with the digital banking services is that there are a lot of security issues associated with giving people access to digital banking accounts. So what we've been doing is we've been training young women in the sort of the more rural regions of India to become the sponsors of cybersecurity and digital processing within their communities. So as young as 12 years old, we're training women to become kind of the ombudsman, if you will, for any kind of security events or IT-related events. That's giving them some economic independence. It's giving them a sense of self and a sense of independence. And we've seen now several thousand women go through this program, amazingly successful. But I think as the kind of program, it's very creative, but it's not just about giving women technical education. It's about giving women economic independence that's critical to enabling us to get to that next level.
That's excellent. So, Kris, when Kyndryl spun off from IBM or E&Y, you had a chance to rethink how to organize a group that was focused on cybersecurity. And first thing is that I know that you prefer the term cyber resilience. Why is that the term that you prefer over cybersecurity?
Well, I can go on about this for hours, but so cybersecurity is way too narrow a focus. At the end of the day, when you're talking to a board of director of a somebody in the C-suite, something bad happened. Like, don't tell me don't give me the anatomy of what happened. Just tell me, high level, what happened, how are you going to fix it? And what they care about is any and all events that are associated with their cyber-enabled services. That can be hardware, software failure, supply chain outage. It could be a data network outage. It could be a data center, or it could be something related to cyber. I don't care. Something bad happened, help me fix it. Cyber resilience is all about the anticipation, the ability to protect, the ability to withstand, and then recover from any and all cyber-related events, including but not limited to security, privacy, et cetera. Now, that's important to broaden that aperture from a business perspective. It also provides a bit more of an ability to apply controls across multiple domains of risk, which is also important for our economic competitiveness. But suffice to say, I'm very focused on this concept of resilience because I do think that, you know, we have created, it's like slicing the bologna, as they say, slicing the bologna way too thin. We really worry about cybersecurity when at the end of the day, we should be worried about the resilience of our governments, of our organizations from a cyber perspective. Security is one aspect of it, but it's not the only aspect we should be worried about.
And how, you know, it's interesting. I overheard my husband speaking to a bank, and I heard him say, "My voice is my code." But then you hear about AI that allows people to imitate people's voices. So how is AI transforming or disrupting cyber resilience?
It's very interesting. I mean, so you have to think about AI as both being of benefit and of threat. And I want to pull it back to something we were talking about in the room about, you know, sort of things like, you know, TikTok, et cetera, and what is the real risk, you know, with technologies like that. So I'm going to answer the question a little bit differently. When I think about AI, what I worry about is the fact that the technology that we develop around AI, it is representative of the values of the creator of that technology. Now, let me pause there and say that AI, the values of that technology are built upon the data that is being used to feed the algorithms. One of the biggest problems we have with AI today is the data. We don't necessarily understand, protect, ensure the integrity, the quality of the data that we use to feed these models. The end result, the outcome of feeding AI with bad data is a bad outcome. There is a significant opportunity for us to manipulate the data sets such that we can have misinformation, disinformation, particularly going into an election cycle. If you have too much data sovereignty, privacy rules that create silos around data, what happens to things like pharmaceuticals? Now, all of a sudden, a pharmaceutical company can't do research in a particular area because they don't have access to the data. It's too expensive. Now, economically disadvantaged populations are going to be more left out of the spectrum. And by the way, what happens when you have people with technical education or the ability to actually just watch TV, they become engaged in not necessarily nefarious activities, but they'll get more engaged in cyber hacking because there's not economic opportunity for them. So we're creating this situation with AI where the haves and the have-nots, there is the potential for us to create a more economic inequality. That economic inequality may introduce more cybersecurity issues, cybersecurity threats, because there are going to be these populations that are left out of the spectrum. So I just wanted people to think about this as, you know, AI is data. We've got to think about the data, and we've got to think about what goes in, and I can tell you that's not what we're thinking about.
Very interesting perspective. So Kamal, in the last few minutes that we have here, I wanted to ask you, what advice would you give to governments in terms of how they're thinking about either regulating AI or not regulating AI? The US seems to have a much more restrictive bend, or at least regulatory bend towards AI, whereas India has said that they're going to have a very light touch when it comes to AI. So what advice would you give to governments in terms of governance of AI?
So there are a couple of things. the way this bias-related laws have come out. In US, the thinking is you are innocent until proven guilty. In EU, they've taken the stance you are guilty unless proven innocent. Right now, the issue is if the laws, AI governance basically, if it's too high level, it's not enforceable. The best thing I can share, and this is genuinely my personal opinion, do what we did with Sarbanes-Oxley. That was also a white-collar crime. Make the CEO and CFO accountable for what's happening and what they are sharing with their books, and suddenly all those issues disappeared. Okay. Right? So make all these AI players, the CEO and CFO accountable, and you'll see magically the use cases get paroled a lot faster and a lot tighter.
Excellent.
It works all the time.
Excellent. Well, everyone, I would like you to join me in thanking our esteemed panel here. It's been a great conversation. Thank you.
Thank you.